I feared werewolves. Now I'm pregnant with the Alpha King's Child Werewolf Shifter Romance audiobook. The name alone carried the weight of legend and fear. Alpha King, Wolf of Wolves. The one whose voice could silence entire councils, whose hand had crushed rebellions before they had the chance to rise. The storm swallowed the night. Wind tore through the treetops like wolves howling overhead, and every crack of thunder felt like the earth itself warning her to run faster. Harlow Vale stumbled through the freezing forest, her boots slipping on wet leaves, her breath tearing at her throat. She clutched her belly with trembling hands, protective, desperate, as if the fragile life inside her might shatter with one wrong step. Her heart beat louder than the storm, louder than the rain hammering against the trees. Somewhere behind her, branches snapped in rhythm with her panic. She didn't dare look back. Shadows moved too quickly there, too hungry. Predators. Not animals. Not men. Wolves. Her chest burned with every gasp, the taste of iron on her tongue. Mud splashed against her legs, thick and cold, dragging her down. Every branch she pushed aside clawed her skin. The forest wasn't just an obstacle, it was a trap, closing in on her, dragging her toward the end she feared most. Her thoughts fractured under the weight of terror. Don't stop. Don't stumble. Don't let them catch you. Because if they found out what she carried, it wouldn't just be her life they'd take. It would be the child's. The child she had never asked for, yet couldn't imagine losing. Lightning split the sky, a jagged vein of light revealing the ravine ahead. The earth dropped away into blackness, a river roaring below like the open jaws of a beast. Her knees buckled, legs trembling with exhaustion, but she staggered forward anyway. There was nowhere else to go, trapped between death behind and destruction ahead. Her breath broke into sobs. She whispered to herself, a plea, a vow, barely audible over the storm. They can't know what I carry. I can't let them take it from me. Her voice cracked, fragile as glass. The next step was her undoing. Her ankle twisted in the mud, her body collapsing onto the earth. Pain shot through her side, white-hot, stealing the last of her strength. She clawed at the ground, dragging herself forward inch by inch, until her fingertips reached the cliff's edge. Her body gave in. She lay trembling, drenched in cold rain, her hair plastered across her face. The storm roared above her, merciless. Her eyes fluttered shut, darkness pulling her under. And then, a glow. At first, she thought it was lightning again, another cruel flash from the heavens. But no, this light was steady, pulsing alive. Silver eyes. They burned through the storm, watching her from the treeline. Her body froze, her heart stuttering with terror and something else, something she didn't dare name. The eyes did not move, but they held her completely, as if she were prey caught in the unblinking gaze of a predator far greater than any she had fled from tonight. The forest quieted around her, as though even the storm bowed to that presence. And in the silence, with the rain falling like icy needles against her skin, she understood one thing with bone-deep certainty. She hadn't escaped at all. She had run straight into something far more dangerous. Something that had been waiting for her. Before I tell you what became of Harlow on that storm-drowned night, take a moment. Subscribe to Florence Werewolf Romance Collection, where stories burn into your soul and never let go. The glow did not fade. If anything, it grew sharper, a predator's gleam in the dark. Harlow's chest rose and fell too quickly, breaths broken and shallow. She wanted to crawl back, to push herself away from the cliff's edge, but her body betrayed her. Every muscle screamed for rest, for surrender. The weight of exhaustion pressed heavier than the storm, but surrender meant death. Her fingers curled into the mud, nails filling with earth, as if clawing to anchor herself to life. The glow shifted, a slow, deliberate movement, and from the shadows stepped a figure. Tall, broad-shouldered. The storm bent around him, as though even the rain feared to touch him. His presence was not human, though he wore the shape of a man. Power radiated from him, raw and magnetic, rolling off his body in waves that made the air thrum. His eyes stayed locked on her, silver burning like a promise and a threat all at once. Harlow's throat closed. She knew that look. An alpha. The most dangerous kind. The storm parted for him. He stepped from the treeline with the deliberate calm of a predator who never needed to chase. The forest bent around his presence, rain slanting away as if even the weather obeyed him. His shadows stretched long across the mud, swallowing the space between them until it felt as though Harlow was already caught in his grasp. Dominic Moon. The name alone carried the weight of legend and fear. Alpha King. Wolf of Wolves. The one whose voice could silence entire councils, whose hand had crushed rebellions before they had the chance to rise. And now he was here, standing before her, watching her as though he had been waiting all along. Harlow's body shook with exhaustion, but her fear burned sharper than the pain. She tried to drag herself backward, away from the cliff, away from him, but her limbs betrayed her. Mud clung to her fingers, her knees sinking deeper with every useless attempt. Then he spoke. Harlow. Her name. Spoken like he owned it. Her breath caught in her throat. How did he know her? She had never stood in his presence before, never dared to imagine he would notice someone like her. A runaway, an exile, a cursed woman hiding in the shadows of forgotten forests. Yet he said her name as though it belonged to him, as though he had tasted it before and would taste it again. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. Her first instinct was to deny it, to tell him he was mistaken, to vanish into silence. But she could not. His gaze held her pinned, stripping every thought bare, leaving her trembling under the weight of being seen. She whispered, voice cracked and thin, "You should know me." His jaw tightened, rain glistening across the sharp line of his cheekbones. "I know everything that enters my land." His voice was deep, smooth, but with an edge that carried both danger and promise. "And you were never meant to run." He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. The ground trembled under his weight, or maybe it was just her body breaking down under fear. She tried to recoil, but his hand caught her before she could collapse again. It wasn't gentle. His grip was iron, firm enough to remind her that he could snap her fragile bones if he wished. Yet beneath the strength was a strange steadiness, an anchoring force that pulled her back from the brink of falling into the ravine. She gasped, half from pain, half from shock. He lifted her effortlessly, cradling her against his chest as though she weighed nothing at all. His body was warm despite the storm, his heartbeat a steady drum beneath her ear. She should have felt safer. Instead, her pulse raced faster, a storm within a storm. Her voice shook. "Put me down. Please." "No." His refusal was flat, absolute. His silver eyes bored into hers. "You are mine to carry." The words sliced through her. Not a question, not an offer, an unshakable truth delivered with alpha authority. Her throat tightened. "I don't belong to you." His gaze dropped briefly to her stomach, the faint curve hidden beneath soaked fabric. The way his eyes lingered there made her insides twist. "Yes," he said, voice lower, more dangerous. "You do. You, and the child you carry. Both of you belong to me." Lightning split the sky, throwing his face into sharp relief, jaw clenched, eyes glowing with something she couldn't name. Possession, fury, maybe even fear, though she doubted a man like him ever felt it. She shook her head violently, tears stinging her eyes. "You can't have us. You don't even know what I am." His mouth curved, not into a smile, but something darker. "I know enough." He held her tighter, his strength a cage she couldn't break. And yet, there was no malice in the way his arms wrapped around her. No cruelty in the way his body shielded her from the pounding rain. He wasn't breaking her. He was protecting her, even if it was against her will. The conflict knotted inside her chest. She wanted to fight him, to scream, to claw at his face, to demand her freedom. But the truth weighed heavier. She was too weak, too wounded, too close to collapse. Without him, she would already be dead. And that terrified her more than anything else. Because survival at his hands meant surrendering to something far more dangerous than death. He carried her through the storm, his steps unwavering, his breathing steady. Harlow's head rested against him only because her strength gave out, but every second felt like betrayal. She hated how solid he felt beneath her, hated how safe his arms seemed when her mind screamed that she was still a prisoner. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. She wanted to close her eyes, to drift away from the weight of his presence, but the heat of him dragged her back each time. His scent filled her lungs, wood smoke and rain, iron and pine, a raw mix that burned itself into memory. And against her will, against every vow she had made to herself, her body calmed. Just slightly. Enough for the fear to twist into something sharper, something she had no name for. Attraction. It cut her like a blade, because it was the last thing she should feel in the arms of Dominic Moon. Yet there it was, humming beneath her skin, betrayal written in every trembling breath. She hated it. She hated herself for it. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why me? His head lowered, his mouth near her ear. His words were a growl, intimate and dangerous all at once. Because you are mine. And because the world will never take you from me. Her stomach clenched. Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, she almost believed him. But then reality crashed back like thunder. She remembered the whispers, the warnings, the prophecies that spoke of women like her. The cursed, the dangerous, the ones who carried fire where no fire should be. And now she carried more than fire. She carried a child. His child. And in that moment, suspended between terror and unwanted safety, Harlow realized the truth that would change everything. She wasn't running from him. She had been running toward him all along. Darkness does not simply live outside of her. It lives inside her bones, in the marrow of who she is. And on nights like this, when the storm gathers low across the valley and Dominic's gaze pins her with unyielding authority, Harlow feels that darkness stir. It whispers of her past, of the bloodline that damned her before she even learned how to speak, of the curse that clung to her womb like frost, promising emptiness, lifelessness, failure. Yet here she is, shaking, pregnant, and chained to the gaze of the Alpha King who refuses to look away. Her breath comes shallow, her chest tight, because being under his stare is not like being under anyone else's. The others looked at her with pity or disgust. He looks at her as if he already knows what she has survived, as if he has seen every wound, every betrayal, every bone-deep scar. His presence pulls the past from her like a tide, and she cannot stop it. Memories flood. Unwanted, unmerciful, unrelenting. The first is of a night she was told she would never bear children. She had been only 16, her body still thin and fragile, her wolf still unsteady in its skin. The pack healer had spoken the words, without ceremony, without mercy. Your womb is cursed. You will never carry life. Her mother wept quietly in the corner, ashamed, while her father's jaw tightened like stone. To them, she was already ruined, already worthless. She remembers sitting on the cold wooden bench, her hands clawing into her dress, wishing she could rip the shame out of her skin. Wishing she could vanish. Now, years later, her hand drifts unconsciously toward the swell of her stomach. Small still, fragile, but undeniably there. A secret the world swore she would never have, and yet it lives, beating, growing. Dominic's eyes follow the motion, and for the briefest second, something flashes there. Not anger, not calculation, but something sharper, more dangerous. Recognition.
Claim.
As if he knew long before she did that this child was never just hers. But the memory shifts before she can linger on it. It drags her backward, deeper into the pit of what shaped her. She sees the first beating, her face shoved into the dirt outside the training grounds. It had been her own pack sisters, laughing while they pressed her down. Curse thing, they spat. Even your own womb rejects you. She had fought back then, clawed and bitten until her lips split and her knuckles bled, but all that did was make the punishments worse. No one defended her. Not her parents, not the elders, not even him. Yes, him. The beta she once thought was her mate. The boy with the quiet smile, the one who whispered promises of forever in the shadows of the forest. He had told her she was enough, that her curse did not matter, that love could be stronger than bloodlines. She believed him, foolish and young, pouring her heart into his hands like it was something precious, something safe. Until the night the truth came. Until the night the pack discovered their secret and demanded his choice. He chose survival. He chose status. He chose to spit in her face and call her worthless, to step back while others dragged her into the dirt. His betrayal cut deeper than any blade, because it told her what she had always feared. She was unworthy of love. Her fingers tremble against her stomach now, the ghost of that night still fresh, still raw. She hides the shaking by folding her arms, by pressing the brokenness back inside where no one can see it. But Dominic sees. Somehow, impossibly, he sees. Because his gaze doesn't soften when it falls on her. It hardens, sharp as steel, unyielding as stone. He notices the faint scars along her wrists, the pale lines etched like whispers of despair. He notices the faint indentation at her throat, where someone once tried to choke the fight out of her. His jaw flexes, and in that silence, she feels his demand before he even speaks. What happened to you? It isn't said aloud, but it thrums through the space between them, heavy, demanding. His presence forces the memories forward, forces her to relive them whether she wants to or not. And she hates him for it. She hates that his eyes can strip her bare, can drag secrets from the graveyard of her soul. She hates that part of her doesn't want to fight it. Her chest rises, falls shallow and quick. Her thoughts are a storm. I cannot trust him. I will not trust him, but why? Why does he feel like the only one who sees me? The fire crackles low in the hearth, but it is not enough to chase the chill crawling over her skin. Dominic does not move closer, but his presence fills the space like a living thing. He has not touched her again, not since lifting her from the ground with that primal possessiveness that made her blood pound with both terror and something far more dangerous. Yet his nearness feels like a touch, every nerve ending alive, waiting. The silence stretches, heavy and unbearable. And then he speaks. His voice is not gentle, not soft. It is the voice of a king, the voice of a predator who expects obedience. Who hurt you? The question is a blade. It cuts her open without warning, without mercy. She wants to snap back, to spit venom, to tell him it doesn't matter. But her body betrays her. Her pulse leaps, her lungs stutter, and her eyes burn with tears she refuses to shed. Because no one has ever asked her that before. Not her parents. Not the pack. Not even the beta who betrayed her. They called her cursed. They called her worthless. But no one ever asked who hurt her. She presses her lips together, tasting the metallic tang of her own fear, of her own defiance. She cannot give him the satisfaction. She cannot hand over the pieces of her past like offerings to a man who might break her all over again. Yet even as she thinks it, another truth claws its way to the surface, relentless. If she doesn't tell him, he will find out anyway. Because Dominic Moon is not a man who leaves stones unturned. And that terrifies her more than the memories themselves. Her heart races, her mind flashes. The cruel laughter of the pack. The broken promises of the beta. The cold words of the healer. They tumble together into a storm inside her skull, a storm she cannot silence. She squeezes her eyes shut, but behind her eyelids, the memories are brighter, sharper. She sees her own blood on the dirt, her own hands clawing at the ground, her own voice screaming in silence. And when she opens her eyes again, Dominic is still there, watching, waiting, unmoving, like a shadow carved into the earth. She whispers inside her head, because she cannot let it out. I cannot trust him. I cannot. But why does he feel like the only one who sees me? The air thickens, pressing against her ribs. Her body is tense, caught between the instinct to flee and the impossible pull to stay. She feels the weight of his claim, the possessive edge in his gaze that said she and her child already belonged to him. And though every scar inside her screams against it, though every betrayal in her past warns her to run, a small, treacherous part of her whispers that maybe, just maybe, being seen is worse than being owned. The cavern opened before them like the mouth of an ancient beast, dark and echoing, yet alive with a light that did not belong to fire. Runes carved into the stone glowed with a quiet, pulsing flame, their shapes older than language itself. The air was heavy, vibrating with a hum that seemed to recognize Harlow's presence. She paused at the threshold, her breath trembling in her chest, as though stepping inside would mean stepping into something she could never turn away from again. Dominic's shadow loomed behind her, broad and unshaken, yet his silence carried weight. He was not rushing her. He was waiting, as if the stones themselves demanded her choice. When she finally stepped forward, the ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. The cavern recognized her, claimed her, drew her deeper. The walls shimmered, each rune sparking brighter as her body passed. It was as if they whispered her name, not with sound but with recognition. She wanted to turn away, to demand answers, to curse him for dragging her into this place that stirred a terror buried too deep in her bones. Yet something stronger than fear tugged her forward, the same force that had pulled her toward Dominic from the first moment their paths collided. At the cavern's heart stood a great slab of stone, etched with symbols so intricate they seemed alive. There. The ground, her pulse loud in her ears. He looked back at her, eyes burning with something she could not name. For years, Dominic continued, I searched for the flame-bearer, the one foretold to bring balance when the packs turn on themselves. A woman whose bloodline carries fire. A woman strong enough to carry a child born of war and peace alike. That woman, Harlow, is you. The word struck her like an open palm across the face. She staggered back, shaking her head, her hands rising as if to ward off the weight pressing into her. No. Her voice cracked, small, desperate. I am not your prophecy. I am nothing. I was cast out. Rejected. She could not finish, because the walls began to respond. The runes ignited in sequence, flaring hotter with every word spoken. A heat swept through the cavern, crawling over her skin, searing into her flesh as if invisible fingers branded her where she stood. She gasped, stumbling, her hands clutching her arms, her wrists, her belly. The fire was inside her, not burning her away, but marking her, claiming her. Visions crashed against her mind like waves. Forests devoured by flame, smoke choking the skies, wolves tearing into each other beneath a blood moon. And then, amid the chaos, a child, her child, silver-eyed, standing between warring packs, unbroken, unafraid, fire and shadow bending at his call. Her knees buckled. She pressed her palms to the cold stone floor, breath ragged, as if her very soul was being ripped open for the prophecy to pour itself inside. Tears burned down her cheeks, not from pain but from the certainty that what she had just seen was not imagination. It was fate. Dominic was beside her before she could collapse, his strong hands gripping her shoulders, grounding her as her body trembled. Breathe, he urged, voice sharp with command but trembling at the edges, as though even he could feel the enormity of what was happening. She shoved him weakly, gasping. You don't understand. I am not meant for this. I was told I could never carry life, and yet, her hands pressed against her stomach, as though shielding the small spark of existence within. I am already a mistake. How can I be chosen? The runes answered for him. They surged, burning so bright that the cavern blazed like a sun trapped underground. The fire leapt across the stone and touched her skin, searing not with destruction but with claim. Lines of molten light etched themselves into her arms, curling across her collarbone, down her throat, into her pulse. They branded her not as a mistake, but as the very vessel the prophecy demanded. Dominic's breath hitched, his iron control fracturing for the first time since she had known him. His thumb brushed against one of the glowing marks on her skin, reverent, almost trembling. The prophecy is chosen, he whispered, not to her, but to the cavern, to the ancient power now binding itself to her. And there is no undoing it. Harlow's heart pounded so violently it hurt. Her shame screamed at her, the voices of her past pack rising in her ears. Barren, cursed, unworthy. Yet those voices crumbled against the weight of what the cavern had declared. She could deny him, deny herself, but she could not deny the fire now pulsing in her veins. She tried to speak, but her throat closed. Every emotion clawed at her at once. Rage, fear, sorrow, disbelief, and beneath it all, a fragile, treacherous thread of hope. Her eyes lifted, colliding with Dominic's. His gaze was steady, fierce, yet there was a softness she had not seen before, a silent vow forming in the way his hand refused to leave hers. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered, broken. "No," he murmured, voice like steel wrapped in fire. "But destiny doesn't ask. It chooses." The cavern seemed to breathe with him, the air tightening, the light pulsing in rhythm with their hearts. In that moment, she was no longer the abandoned Omega, no longer the cursed woman scorned by her first love. She was something the world itself had waited for. And whether she wanted it or not, the fire would not release her. Still, deep inside, a storm gathered. She could not trust him. She could not trust fate. And yet, every time he looked at her, every time his presence steadied her as the fire threatened to consume her, she felt the chains of her doubt strain. And in the silence that followed, the runes dimmed, leaving only their faint glow. But the marks on her skin remained, alive, burning softly as if the prophecy had carved itself into her very soul. The myth had awakened. The child was no longer just hers. It was Destiny's. The night split open with the sound of teeth snapping through the dark. Shadows lunged from the treeline, wolves with eyes burning crimson, their bodies slick with the musk of rage. The air thickened, charged with the scent of iron and the cold promise of blood. Harlow had only a heartbeat to understand. The world had finally found them. The rival pack came without warning, their growls weaving into a chorus of hate that clawed at her spine. She was seized, rough hands digging into her arms, claws dragging across her skin as she was torn from Dominic's side. Her cry was swallowed by the night. The forest itself seemed to close in, pressing down with suffocating judgment. They dragged her to the gathering grounds, the earth hard beneath her knees, the moon an unblinking witness above. Circles of hostile faces closed around her, shifting bodies half-wolf, half-man, their growls a verdict before words were ever spoken. She could feel the heat of their breath, smell their fury, taste their contempt. To them, she wasn't a woman. She was the threat they'd been waiting to crush. Accusations hissed through the air like arrows. A cursed child. A womb that should never have held life. A prophecy that dared to write her name into its pages. The council's eyes blazed with fear disguised as rage, and every gaze cut into her like a blade. Her chest heaved, the truth she carried beating inside her like a war drum no one could silence. Dominic stood at her side, a tower of menace and fury, yet the pressure of 1,000 voices tried to grind him down. They demanded her life. They demanded her blood. They demanded the sacrifice of the woman he had sworn, at least in his silence, to protect. The air trembled when he moved. His body snapped forward, his claws catching the firelight, his growl a storm breaking over the crowd. He did not plead. He did not explain. He fought. He tore through their circle with the force of an alpha who had been waiting his whole life for this moment, and every wolf that fell before him carried the weight of his defiance. But even as he fought for her, she saw it. The flicker of hesitation in his eyes, the unspoken doubt that cut deeper than any wound his enemies could carve. Was she worth this war? Was the child worth this chaos? Or was he simply too bound by fate to step aside? The clash raged around them, but inside her chest another war tore her apart. The child inside her shifted, a fragile life she was terrified to claim, yet more terrified to lose. She watched Dominic's power strike down enemies, but the fear that he might abandon her struck harder than claws. The battle ended in blood and silence. Broken bodies sprawled like shadows across the earth. The rival pack retreated, but the victory was poisoned. The council's eyes still burned with judgment, their whispers carrying promises of war to come. Harlow's knees gave out beneath her. Her body shook, her throat raw with a grief she could no longer contain. Her voice cracked the night, so small it should have been lost to the wind, yet it pierced deeper than any roar of battle. "I will never be safe, not even with him." The words fell like stones into a silent lake, their ripples reaching farther than she could see. Dominic's shadow stretched over her, torn between rage and something he could not name. The world had tested them, and though he had fought, her heart felt more broken than if he had simply walked away. She bowed her head, trembling, the weight of every scar she carried pressing down on her shoulders. The clash had ended, but her war was only beginning. The cave swallowed them whole, a sanctuary carved by nature itself, yet heavy with silence that felt alive. Shadows clung to the stone walls, flickering under the soft orange breath of fire Dominic had coaxed to life. The scent of burning pine mingled with the faint, metallic tang of blood still drying on Harlow's skin. Her body ached with every breath, but it was not the pain that broke her. It was the look in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching. A storm of devotion and doubt, warring endlessly inside him. She sat against the rock, knees drawn close, one hand instinctively pressing to her abdomen. Beneath her palm, a heartbeat pulsed. Tiny, steady, relentless. It was not her own, and that terrified her more than any claw, any fang, any prophecy etched in flame. Dominic knelt beside her, movements careful, as though she might shatter if he touched too quickly. His hands were large, scarred, roughened by battles fought before her, battles that still haunted him. When his fingers brushed the torn skin on her arm, she flinched, not from pain, but from the intimacy of it. His touch was steady, sure, but beneath it was restraint so tight it might suffocate him. He tended to her wounds with silent devotion, yet every graze of his hand carried a story. She could feel them, scars that lived beneath his skin, wounds that never healed. He bore them not only on his flesh, but in the hollows of his heart. And when the firelight caught the sharp lines of his jaw, she saw him not as alpha, not as feared leader, not as protector of prophecy. She saw him as a man broken and still bleeding. His shirt clung to his torso, torn from battle, dark stains marking where claws had raked across him. She reached for him before she could stop herself, fingers trembling as they brushed a mark seared into his side. His muscles tensed beneath her touch, not from pain, but from memory. She pulled back quickly, but he caught her wrist, guiding her hand back, pressing it over the scar. That scar was deep, jagged, unnatural. Not from battle, not from beast, from betrayal. Her breath stilled as his eyes locked with hers. No words passed, but she felt the confession bloom in the silence between them. His first mate, poison in the blood. A family slaughtered by trust misplaced. A love that curdled into ruin. He bore it all, and yet here he was, kneeling before her, offering pieces of himself that no alpha should ever bear. The fire cracked softly, the only witness to the fragile honesty unraveling in the cavern. She wanted to look away, to retreat into the safety of indifference, but she could not. His vulnerability pulled at her, demanded to be seen, demanded she hold it as he held her bleeding wounds. Her lips trembled, and before she could silence it, the truth poured out. The truth she had swallowed for too long, buried beneath layers of anger and denial. She whispered it into the cave, into the fire, into him. She never wanted this child, never asked for it, never wished for the weight of destiny in her womb. It had been chains at first, cruel and unyielding. But tonight, in the chaos of blood and fear, something shifted. For when she pressed her hand to her abdomen, she did not feel only chains. She felt life, a rhythm tied to hers. A heartbeat that throbbed with her own. And she could not turn away. Not anymore. Her confession cracked the air like lightning. And in the quiet that followed, she hated herself for admitting it, yet she could not take it back. She had let him see her fear, her weakness, her war with herself. And instead of recoiling, he leaned closer, his presence filling the cavern until she could feel his breath ghosting across her cheek. Her pulse stuttered, every nerve tightening. The firelight painted him in shadows and gold, and for a moment, she forgot the world outside. Forgot the rival packs. Forgot the council's condemning eyes. All she knew was him, Dominic, scarred and unyielding, kneeling at her side as though she was not cursed but sacred. Their lips hovered, a breath apart. The pull was undeniable, primal, and yet fear lashed through her chest. Fear of surrender, fear of destiny, fear of herself. She froze, unable to cross that fragile distance, unable to let him claim what had not yet been given. And then his whisper, low, steady, carved into her very bones. If the world hates you, let it. I do not. The words curled around her like a shield, fragile and fierce all at once. They were not the vow of an alpha, not the command of a leader. They were the confession of a man. And they unraveled something inside her that had been wound tight for far too long. She turned her face away, a single tear slipping free, though she did not know if it fell from grief or longing. He did not chase it. He only sat there, his hand still pressing against her wound, his body near enough that his warmth seeped into her bones. The cave fell silent but alive, humming with the weight of what was unsaid. Every flicker of the fire was a heartbeat. Every breath shared was a promise not yet spoken. And beneath it all, the child within her stirred. As if it, too, felt the shift. The hours stretched thin, drawn taut by silence and closeness. She drifted in and out of sleep, but always, his presence anchored her. Each time her eyes opened, she found him still there, tending the fire, watching her with a gaze that was both protector and prisoner. For he was bound too, not only by prophecy, but by something far more dangerous, hope. The storm outside raged on. Wolves howled in the distance, a reminder that the world was not done tearing them apart. Yet inside the cave, another storm brewed. Softer, quieter, but far more dangerous. For no claw, no curse, no prophecy could wound deeper than the stirrings of the heart. Harlow lay there, torn between two truths. The world wanted her destroyed, and yet here he was, willing to burn for her. She pressed her hand again to her abdomen, feeling the faint rhythm of the life she carried. And for the first time, she let herself believe what terrified her most. Perhaps she was not only burdened. Perhaps she was chosen. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was not as alone as she had always believed. Branches snapped under her feet as Harlow plunged deeper into the darkness, her breath ragged, tears blurring the world into a smear of shadows and fire. The flames licked at her heels, not burning her but devouring everything else. The ancient oaks, the underbrush that had whispered secrets to her just days ago. Her heart pounded like a war drum, each beat screaming betrayal. Dominic's face flashed in her mind, that split-second pause before his counsel, the way his eyes had flickered with doubt. It wasn't just hesitation, it was a knife twisted in her gut, confirming what she'd feared all along. He'd choose his pack over her, over their child. She stumbled over a root, catching herself against a trunk that scorched at her touch. The power inside her roared, unchecked now, a wild thing she'd kept leashed for too long. It wasn't just fire. It was her rage, her sorrow, manifesting in bursts of heat that set the night ablaze. The moon hung low, blood-red, mocking her with its fullness. How had it come to this? Paraded like a criminal, her belly swelling with life that should have been a blessing, but instead branded her a traitor. The clan's whispers echoed in her ears. Destroyer, harbinger of war. And Dominic, oh, God, Dominic. His silence had been louder than any accusation. Back at the gathering, the air thickened with tension as the council erupted. Dominic stood frozen, his fists clenched, jaw tight enough to crack stone. The elders' voices rose like a storm, accusations flying, demands for exile, for blood. "She's an outsider," one snarled, his eyes glowing amber in the torchlight. "Her kind brings nothing but ruin." Dominic's wolf clawed at him from within, urging him to defend, to claim her as his mate. But the weight of leadership pressed down, the fragile peace he'd forged between clans hanging by a thread. One wrong move, and it all unraveled. His hesitation wasn't doubt in her, it was fear. For the pack, for the child, for the future he'd dreamed of building with her. But she didn't know that. She'd seen only the pause, the crack in his armor, and it had shattered her. Harlow pushed on, the forest fire spreading like her unraveling emotions. Smoke choked the air, acrid and bitter, mirroring the taste of betrayal on her tongue. Her hand pressed to her abdomen, protective, fierce. This child, half wolf, half whatever wild magic coursed through her veins, was innocent. But the clans saw only threat, a hybrid that could tip the scales of power. She remembered Dominic's touch, the way he'd traced her skin under the stars, whispering promises of forever. Lies? Or just fragile dreams crushed under duty? The pain twisted deeper, a physical ache that made her double over, flames erupting from her fingertips into the soil. Miles away, Dominic broke free from the council's grip, his roar echoing through the clearing. Enough. He shifted in a blur of fur and fury, bounding into the woods after her. The scent of smoke hit him first, then her. Fear, anger, heartbreak woven into the wind. His paws tore the earth, muscles burning as he raced against the inferno she'd unwittingly unleashed. Guilt gnawed at him. That hesitation had been a mistake, born of shock, not rejection. He'd fought for her before, bled for her, but tonight, with the eyes of every clan upon him, he'd faltered. And now she was gone, lost in the blaze of her own making. Harlow collapsed against a boulder, the rock heating under her palms. Exhaustion warred with a surge of power, her body trembling. The child kicked, a tiny flutter that grounded her amid the chaos. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the night, to the life inside her. "I thought he was different." Memories flooded in. Their first meeting, the electric pull when their eyes locked across the battlefield. Stolen nights in hidden glades, where he'd shown her his vulnerabilities, the scars from pack wars that had hardened him. She'd opened up too, sharing the isolation of her hybrid existence, always on the run. Together, they'd felt whole. But now? Shattered pieces scattering in the wind. The fire encircled her, a ring of protection and destruction. Animals fled, their panicked cries piercing the night. Harlow's mind raced. Where to go? The clans would hunt her now, seeing her as the spark that could ignite all-out war. And Dominic? Part of her yearned for him to chase, to prove her wrong. The other part, the wounded one, wanted to burn it all down. Her flames danced higher, reflecting in her eyes, turning them molten gold. She stood, resolve hardening. No more running scared. If they wanted a destroyer, she'd give them one. Dominic caught her scent stronger now, mingled with the acrid burn. His wolf form pushed harder, leaping over fallen logs wreathed in flame. Inside, turmoil raged. Love clashing with duty. The council's words haunted him. Choose, Alpha. Her or us. He'd built this alliance from ashes, after years of bloodshed. Losing it meant more death, more loss. But losing her? That was a void he couldn't fathom. The child complicated everything, a bridge between worlds or a fuse to BLO. Yes, flaring around her like a shield. Stay back. Her voice cracked, raw with emotion. There he was, emerging from the smoke, chest heaving, eyes pleading. Sweat glistened on his skin, mixing with soot. The sight of him, strong, vulnerable, tugged at her, but she shoved it down. You hesitated, Dominic. In front of everyone. You let them call me a monster. He stopped, hands raised, the heat waves distorting the air between them. I didn't, I was shocked. The child, our child. I didn't know how to protect you both. His voice broke, the alpha facade cracking. Pain etched his features, the internal war visible in every tense muscle. I've fought for you every step. But the peace, it's fragile. One word, and it crumbles. Harlow's laugh was bitter, echoing hollowly. And I'm the one who crumbles it? Me. Carrying your air? Her hand cradled her belly again, the gesture defiant. The flames calmed slightly, responding to her emotions, but the air hummed with tension. Smoke curled around them, the forest groaning as trees succumbed to the blaze. I trusted you. More than anyone. And you stood there, silent. Dominic stepped closer, ignoring the heat singeing his clothes. His eyes locked on hers, filled with regret. Silence doesn't mean betrayal. I was planning how to turn this. The child could unite us, not divide. But even as he said it, doubt flickered. The clans were old, set in their ways, fearing anything new. He reached for her, but she recoiled, flames spiking. Don't touch me. Tears streamed down her face, evaporating in the heat. Vulnerability hit her like a wave. She'd bared her soul to him, only to feel exposed, raw. The physical pull was still there, that magnetic draw of mates, but now laced with pain. Her body ached for his comfort, even as her mind screamed to flee. He dropped his hand, chest tightening. Harlow, please. Come back. We'll face them together. But the words felt empty, the council's demands echoing in his head. Deep down, he knew the choice loomed. Her or the pack. The atmosphere pressed in, heavy with smoke and unspoken fears. The moon watched, indifferent. She shook her head, backing away. Together? You mean me as your secret shame? Power built again, the ground trembling faintly. The child stirred, as if sensing the rift. Harlow's internal conflict raged, love him or protect herself. The forest fire mirrored her turmoil, chaotic and consuming. Dominic's shoulders sagged, the weight of it all crushing. I love you. That's not a secret. But love wasn't enough in their world, riddled with politics and ancient grudges. He felt the bond straining, threads fraying under pressure. With a sob, Harlow turned, flames parting for her path. Love doesn't hesitate. She vanished into the inferno, leaving him alone amid the ruins. He howled, the sound pure anguish, echoing through the burning woods. The pack would demand answers, but all he had was loss. Shifting back, he raced after her trail, determination hardening. He wouldn't let this break them, not without a fight. Harlow emerged from the forest's edge, the blaze behind her a distant glow. Dawn crept in, painting the sky bruised purple. Exhaustion clawed at her, but she pressed on, toward the river that marked neutral territory. Water would douse her flames, give her time to think. Her mind whirled with what-ifs. What if she'd hidden the pregnancy longer? What if Dominic had spoken up? The betrayal stung fresh, a wound that wouldn't clot. The river rushed ahead, cold and unforgiving. She waded in, the chill shocking her system, flames hissing out. Submerged to her waist, she let the current pull at her, washing away soot and tears. But not the pain. That lodged deep, a constant ache. The child kicked again, reminding her she wasn't alone. We'll be okay, she murmured, hand on her belly. Vulnerability washed over her. She'd never planned for motherhood, especially not like this, hunted and heartbroken. On the opposite bank, she climbed out, dripping, shivering. A cave loomed nearby, a temporary shelter. Inside, darkness enveloped her, the drip of water echoing her solitude. She curled up, emotions crashing. Anger at Dominic mingled with longing, fear for the future tangled with fierce protectiveness. Sleep came fitfully, dreams haunted by his face, his touch. Dominic lost her scent at the river, the water erasing her trail. Frustration boiled over. He punched a tree, bark splintering. The pack howled in the distance, calling him back. Duty pulled, but his heart rebelled. Damn it, Harlow. He paced the bank, mind racing. She was out there, alone, vulnerable. The clans would send trackers soon, seeing her as a threat to eliminate. He dove into the river, swimming across, emerging soaked and determined. Her faint scent lingered on the other side. Fear. Resolve. He followed, every step deepening his resolve. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about the family they'd created, unwittingly or not. Harlow woke to footsteps outside the cave. Heart racing, she summoned flames to her palms, ready to fight. But it was a lone wolf, not from the clans, a rogue shifter, eyes curious. Easy, he said, shifting to human form, hands up. Tall, scarred, with a rugged edge. Saw the fire last night. Figured someone needed help. She eyed him warily, flames flickering. I don't need help. But her voice wavered, exhaustion betraying her. The stranger, Elias, he introduced, offered food, a listening ear. No agenda, just survival in the neutral lands. His presence stirred unease. He wasn't Dominic, but the empathy in his eyes touched her vulnerability. As they talked by a small fire, hers controlled now, Elias shared his story, exiled for challenging an alpha, wandering ever since. Betrayal cuts deep, he said, voice low. Makes you question everything. Harlow nodded, opening up slightly, the shared pain creating a tentative bond. But inside, conflict brewed. This connection felt like disloyalty to Dominic, even as anger lingered. Dominic caught a new scent mingling with hers, male, unfamiliar. Jealousy surged, his wolf growling possessively. He tracked faster, the terrain roughening into hills. The thought of her with another twisted him up, amplifying his regret. He should have claimed her publicly, hesitation be damned. Harlow laughed softly at Elias's tale, a sound foreign after the night's turmoil. But it felt hollow. Her thoughts drifted to Dominic. The child moved, as if protesting the stranger. Physical tension built. The cave felt smaller, Elias's proximity unsettling. She stood abruptly. I should go. Elias nodded, no pressure. If you need an ally, I'm here. His offer hung, tempting in her isolation. Outside, the wind carried Dominic's howl, close, urgent. Her heart skipped. Part of her wanted to answer, but pride held her back. She slipped away, deeper into the hills, emotions churning. Dominic crested a ridge, spotting the cave. The stranger's scent was strong. He shifted, approaching cautiously. Where is she? His voice was a growl. Elias emerged calm.
Gone.
But she's hurting, man. Whatever you did, fix it. The words hit like a punch. Dominic's shoulders tensed, internal war raging. She's mine.
But was she?
After last night? Elias shrugged. Doesn't seem like she agrees. Fury boiled, but Dominic reined it in, turning to follow her trail. The encounter fueled his desperation. He couldn't lose her to the wilds or another. Harlow climbed higher, the air thinning, mist rolling in. Fatigue slowed her, but determination pushed on. The landscape mirrored her inner chaos, jagged rocks, swirling fog. Memories assaulted her. Dominic's kisses, fierce and tender. Arguments that ended in passion, the night they conceived, under that same blood moon. Now, it all felt tainted. A contraction like pain gripped her. No. Too early. Stress, perhaps. She leaned against a cliff, breathing through it. Vulnerability peaked. She missed his strength, his reassurance. But trust was fractured. Dominic gained ground, her scent fresher. His body ached from the pursuit, but adrenaline surged. He imagined finding her, pulling her close, explaining. But words failed him, even in thought. She heard him before seeing, footsteps crunching gravel. Harlow. His voice, hoarse, pleading. She froze, back to him. Leave me alone. He approached slowly, the mist parting like a veil.
I can't.
We need to talk. She turned, eyes blazing. Talk. Like you did last night? Flames sparked at her feet. He winced, the accusation fair. I messed up. The council blindsided me.
But I choose you. Us.
Her laugh was sharp. Too late. The damage is done. Tension crackled, physical and emotional. He stepped closer, the pull undeniable. It's not too late. His hand brushed her arm, sparks flying, literal and figurative. She jerked away, but the contact ignited longing. Internal conflict tore at her. Forgive or flee. The mist thickened, hiding them from the world. Dominic's eyes searched hers, vulnerability bare. I love you. The child, our child, is everything. Tears welled. Then why hesitate?
Fear.
Of losing the pack, starting war. But losing you terrifies me more. Empathy stirred. She saw his turmoil, mirroring hers. The bond hummed, urging reconciliation. But hurt lingered. A distant howl, trackers. The clans had sent them. Dominic tensed. They're coming. We have to move. She nodded, alliance tentative. Together, they ran, the pursuit forcing closeness. Through valleys and streams, they evaded, breaths sinking. Conversation snippets emerged, regrets, fears shared. Physical exhaustion built, but so did connection. At a hidden grotto, they rested, tension palpable. Dominic's hand found hers. I'm sorry. She squeezed back, vulnerability winning. Prove it. He did, with words, touches, rebuilding brick by brick. But the trackers closed in, danger looming. A confrontation brewed, clans versus them. Harlow's power surged, protective. Dominic stood firm, declaring his choice. As they fled, arguments flared. Dominic's pack loyalty slipped out in plans, reigniting doubt. You still think of them first, she accused. It's not that simple, he countered. It escalated, words like weapons. In a moment of rage, she lashed out with fire, singeing him. Hurt, he recoiled. Maybe they're right. You're too dangerous. The words hung, irreversible. Harlow's heart shattered anew. Then go back to them. He did, regret immediate but pride held. She watched him leave, devastation complete. Alone, power raging, she vowed revenge or survival. Harlow wandered into a meadow, flowers wilting at her approach. The sun beat down, contrasting the night's chill. Her mind replayed the separation, pain fresh. The child, her anchor, kicked insistently. We'll make it, she promised, voice steadying. Days passed in solitude, foraging, hiding. Emotions ebbed and flowed, anger giving way to grief, then resolve. She discovered new facets of her power, controlling flames with precision, a tool for survival. Dominic returned to the pack hollow. The council pressed, but he defied, searching secretly. Internal conflict peaked, duty versus love. He encountered Elias again, jealousy flaring. She's strong, Elias said. Doesn't need you. It fueled Dominic's determination. A reunion attempt. He found her camp, approaching under truce. Harlow, please. She faced him, guard up. What do you want? To make it right. Misunderstanding drove the wedge deeper. She fled, heart hardened. Harlow, cornered, unleashes power, forcing Dominic to choose, side with Pack or her. He hesitates again, the fatal flaw. She leaves for good, carrying their child into unknown lands. The flames died behind her as Harlow burst from the forest's grip, her lungs burning, each gasp a raw plea for air that wouldn't come easy. The night air slapped her face, cold and merciless, carrying the distant howls of the clans, hungry, accusing. She didn't look back, couldn't. Dominic's hesitation replayed like a loop in her mind, that frozen moment when his eyes met hers and chose silence over defense. It wasn't just a pause. It was abandonment, a crack in the foundation they'd built from whispered vows and stolen touches. Her hand pressed to her swelling belly, feeling the faint stir of life inside, a life that should have bound them tighter, but instead tore everything loose. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing in a clearing where the blood moon cast long shadows like fingers reaching for her. The ground was damp with dew, soaking through her clothes, chilling her to the bone. But the real cold was inside, spreading from her chest, numbing the edges of her fury to reveal the grief beneath. Why? She whispered to the stars, voice breaking. Why had she believed in him? Dominic, with his strong arms that had held her through storms, his laugh that rumbled like thunder, his promises that felt as solid as the earth. Now it all felt like smoke, illusory vanishing. The child kicked, a tiny protest, and she curled around it, protective instinct surging. This little one was hers now, no matter what. But the loneliness hit hard, a physical weight pressing down, making her breath hitch. Back in the clan grounds, Dominic paced the council fire, the elders' eyes boring into him like hot coals. The air reeked of singed wood and tension, the kind that made fur bristle even in human form. "You let her go," one elder growled, his voice low and lethal. "That hybrid witch and her spawn could end us all." Dominic's jaw clenched, muscles coiling tight under his skin. He wanted to roar back, to tell them she was his mate, his everything. But the hesitation lingered in his memory, that split second where fear for the pack's fragile peace had overridden his heart. It wasn't doubt in her. It was the burden of Alpha, the lives depending on him. Yet, he knew, she'd seen it as betrayal. His chest ached with it, a deep, throbbing pain that made him want to shift and run until he found her. "I'll bring her back," he muttered, more to himself than them. But the words tasted like lies. How could he, when his own indecision had driven her away? Harlow rose as dawn broke, the sky bleeding pink like an open wound. Her body protested, aches from the run, the fire's drain on her energy, but she pushed forward, toward the rugged hills that promised hiding spots from prying eyes. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying scents of wildflowers and earth, but it did nothing to soothe the storm inside. Anger bubbled up again, hot and fierce. How dare he hesitate? She'd given him her trust, her body, her secrets, the hybrid blood that made her an outcast everywhere else. In his arms, she'd felt safe, wanted. Remembered nights flashed, his fingers tracing her scars, his breath warm on her neck as he murmured, "You're mine, Harlow. No one takes you from me." Lies, all of it? The doubt gnawed, mixing with the vulnerability of carrying his child alone. What if the clans caught her? What if the power surging in her veins hurt the baby? She stopped, hand on a tree, bark warming under her touch.
No.
She wouldn't let fear win. But the isolation clawed at her, making her yearn for connection, for someone to share the weight. Dominic slipped away from the camp at first light, shifting into wolf form to cover ground fast. His paws pounded the earth, senses sharp, her scent faint but there, laced with fear and fire. Guilt rode him hard, each stride a reminder of his failure. He'd built this life as Alpha from the ruins of old wars, forging alliances with blood and will. The pack was his family, but Harlow? She was his soul. The child news had hit like a thunderclap, joy twisted with terror. A hybrid heir could unite or destroy. His hesitation wasn't rejection, it was calculation, buying time. But she didn't know that. He imagined her face, pale with hurt, and it fueled him. The terrain blurred, forests giving way to open fields, the sun climbing, heating his fur. Inside, conflict raged, duty to the many versus love for the one. If he found her, could he convince her? Or would his words ring hollow, tainted by that damning pause? Harlow crested a hill, overlooking a valley dotted with streams that glittered like silver veins. Thirst drove her down, the water cool on her lips as she drank. But as she knelt, a wave of nausea hit, morning sickness amplified by stress. She retched, then sat back, wiping her mouth, feeling more exposed than ever. The baby's presence was a constant now, a flutter that grounded her amid the chaos. "Your father, he should have fought for us," she said softly, voice thick with emotion. Empathy for the unborn child swelled. It deserved better than this fractured world. Memories intruded. Dominic's hand on her belly weeks ago, his eyes lighting up with wonder. Our future, he'd called it. Now, future felt like a curse. The air hummed with tension, birds falling silent as if sensing her turmoil. She stood, resolve hardening. She'd find a safe place, away from clans, away from him. But the pull lingered, that mate bond tugging like an invisible thread, making her chest tight. He caught a fresher trail near the stream, her scent mingled with sickness. Worry spiked. Was she okay? The child? Dominic pushed harder, muscles burning, the valley unfolding before him. The atmosphere shifted, heavier, as if the land itself mourned their rift. He shifted back to human, calling her name, voice echoing off the rocks. No answer, but he felt her close, the bond vibrating with her pain. Regret choked him. He should have roared his claim last night. Damn the consequences. The pack's peace was important, but not at this cost. Vulnerability crept in. He'd always been the strong alpha, but with her, he'd shown his fears, his doubts. Losing that intimacy terrified him more than any battle. Harlow heard his call, freezing mid-step. Her heart raced, a mix of hope and rage. Part of her wanted to run to him, bury her face in his chest, let his warmth chase the cold away. The other part, the wounded one, built walls of fire in her mind. She climbed higher, rocks scraping her palms, the effort pulling at her core. Physical tension built. Her body, changing with pregnancy, protested the strain. But stopping meant facing him, and she wasn't ready. Internal conflict tore at her. Forgive the man she loved, or protect herself from more hurt. The wind picked up, carrying his scent, sweat, wolf, desperation. It stirred longing, making her falter. Harlow, please. His voice closer now, pleading. She glanced back, seeing him in the distance, climbing after her. His frame, powerful and familiar, tugged at her empathy. He looked wrecked, hair disheveled, eyes shadowed. For a moment, vulnerability won. She stopped, turning to face him. He reached the ledge, breath heavy, eyes locking on hers. The air between them crackled, thick with unspoken words. I couldn't let you go like this, he said, voice rough. The hesitation. It wasn't what you think. Then what was it? She shot back, arms crossed over her belly, protective. Flames flickered at her fingertips, responding to her emotion. The valley below seemed distant, the world narrowing to just them. Fear, he admitted, stepping closer, hands open. For the pack, for the peace I've bled for. But mostly for you, for us. The child changes everything. I needed a second to think how to protect you. ITY, the raw vulnerability in his eyes. The bond pulled, urging her forward. But doubt lingered, a sharp edge. Together means equality. Not me as your hidden shame. It's not like that. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back, the rejection hitting him like a blow. Tension peaked, their bodies inches apart, heat from her power mingling with his natural warmth. She felt the pull, the physical ache to touch him, but held firm. Prove it. Walk away from the pack. His face fell, conflict flashing. I can't. They're my responsibility. There it was, the hesitation again. Her heart cracked wider. Then you can't have me. She turned, descending the other side, tears blinding her. He called after, but she didn't stop. The break felt final, devastation settling in like fog. Dominic watched her go, chest hollow. The pack's hulls rose in the distance, pulling him back. Duty won, but at what cost? He shifted, running homeward, regret a constant companion. Inside, the war raged. Love lost to leadership. Harlow reached a secluded grove, trees arching like guardians. Exhaustion claimed her. She sank to the moss, sobbing quietly. The child stirred, as if comforting. Empathy for her own vulnerability surged. She was strong, but human too, needing connection. But trust was shattered. Rebuilding seemed impossible. Days blurred into a rhythm of survival. She moved north, toward unclaimed lands, foraging berries, hunting small game with controlled flames. The pregnancy progressed, her belly rounding, movements more pronounced. Each kick reminded her of Dominic, stirring mixed emotions, love for the life, anger at its father. Nights were hardest, alone under the stars, memories haunting. His touch, his voice, the way he'd made her feel seen. Now, isolation amplified her internal conflict, yearn for him or embrace independence. One evening, by a campfire, a stranger approached, a female shifter, lone like her. Mira, with kind eyes and a scar across her cheek. Saw your fire from afar. Mind company. Harlow tensed, but the woman's energy felt safe. They talked, sharing stories of betrayal. Mira had lost her mate to clan politics, echoing Harlow's pain. The connection built slowly, empathy bridging their wounds. It gets easier, Mira said, voice soft. But the scar remains. For the first time, Harlow opened up fully, tears flowing. Vulnerability shared lightened the load, human connection a balm. But Dominic haunted her thoughts. Rumors reached her. He defied the council, searching for her. Hope flickered, but she smothered it. Dominic, meanwhile, grew restless. The pack suffered under his distraction, alliances straining. He confided in his beta, voice breaking. I lost her because I couldn't choose. The beta nodded. Then choose now. He did, leaving the pack temporarily, tracking her north. The journey tested him. Hunger, weather, doubt. Internal conflict peaked. Was he too late? He found her camp, Mira gone for the night. Harlow sat by the fire, belly prominent, face illuminated. His heart clenched. She sensed him, standing. Why are you here? To beg forgiveness. He approached, eyes on her belly. Our child. Don't. Her voice cracked, emotions surging. Physical tension built. The bond alive, pulling them closer. He knelt, hand hovering. Let me feel. She allowed it, his touch electric. Tears fell as the baby kicked. Vulnerability peaked for both. I left the pack, he said. For you. Hope bloomed, but suspicion lingered. For how long? Until we build our own way. They talked through the night, emotions raw. But a scout from the clans interrupted at dawn, attacking. In the fight, Dominic protected her, but his words to the scout, tell them I'm done, felt half-hearted. Doubt returned. You still care about their approval. He denied, but the hesitation was there, subtle. It broke her. Go back. We don't need you. He left, devastated, the rift wider. Harlow pressed on with Mira, forging a new bond. The birth neared, pain and joy mixing. She named the child in her mind, vowing strength. Dominic returned to the pack, changed, harder, lonelier. The betrayal he felt was self-inflicted, breaking him inside. Months later, word came of Harlow's safe delivery. A boy, healthy, powerful. He longed to see them, but the distance was absolute. Shadows exploded across the sacred grove as the enemy surged in, their howls ripping through the twilight like jagged knives. The air thickened with the metallic tang of impending blood, trees whispering frantic warnings in the wind that whipped through the ancient oaks. Dominic fought at the center, his claws slashing, matted with sweat and gore, but his mind screamed for Harlow, for the mate he'd driven away, for the child she carried that now felt like a ghost haunting his every move. The unborn heir, a beacon of hope-turned target, pulsed in his thoughts as enemies closed in, their eyes glowing with feral hunger. He roared, but doubt clawed deeper. Without her, was this fight even worth it? Harlow felt the pull from miles away, a searing tug in her gut that yanked her from the numb haze of solitude. Her body, heavy with the child, burned with a new fire. Not the wild rage of betrayal, but a controlled blaze, silver and sharp, forged in the crucible of her pain. She'd wandered the wilds, Mira at her side for a time, learning to harness the hybrid power that once terrified her. Now it hummed under her skin, ready. The grove's distress echoed in her blood, the air's tiny heartbeat syncing with hers, urging her back. Empathy surged for the wolves she'd once called allies, even those who'd mocked her outside her blood. Vulnerability twisted inside. Returning meant facing Dominic, the man whose hesitation had shattered her. But the child deserved a world without this threat. She shifted direction, flames trailing silver in her wake, empowerment rising like a tide. The battlefield was chaos incarnate, fur and fawn clashing under a sky-bruised purple. Dominic parried a massive wolf, teeth sinking into his shoulder, pain lancing hot. His pack faltered, outnumbered, the sacred stones at the grove's heart cracking under enemy paws. Internal conflict raged. He'd chosen duty over her, and now it cost everything. A pup yelped nearby, one who'd once sneered at Harlow's flames, now cornered. Dominic lunged to protect, but enemies swarmed. Then, a silver inferno erupted at the edge, Harlow bursting through like a storm-given form. Her eyes blazed molten, hair whipping wild, belly proud and unyielding. She extended her hands, and flames lashed out, not destructive, but precise, encircling foes in rings of silver fire that burned without consuming, forcing surrender. Gasps rippled through the pack as Harlow advanced, her presence commanding the air itself. The mocking wolves from before stared, awe replacing scorn. One, a grizzled beta who'd called her weak, fell back as her flames shielded him from a lethal strike. "How?" he muttered, but she didn't answer, her focus laser-sharp on the fray. Physical tension coiled in her muscles, the child's weight a constant reminder, but it fueled her, not hindered. She rescued another, pulling a young shifter from jaws with a whip of silver light, her power undeniable now. Empathy flickered. She understood their fear of the unknown, mirrored her own past isolation. But this was her claim, not sacrifice, but savior. Dominic spotted her across the melee, heart slamming against his ribs. Time slowed, the bond igniting like a fuse. She was transformed, stronger, fiercer, the vulnerability he'd glimpsed before now armored in resolve. He fought toward her, slashing through two attackers, blood spraying. "Harlow." His voice cracked with raw emotion, a mix of relief and regret. She met his gaze briefly, flames reflecting in her eyes, but turned away, saving another pack member who'd once turned their back on her. The act deepened their connection, unspoken. Her return wasn't for him, but for all, proving her heart's vastness. The enemy leader, a hulking alpha with scars like lightning bolts, laughed maniacally, charging at the sacred stones where the air's essence seemed to thrum. "The child will be ours," he bellowed, claws aimed to shatter the grove's heart. Harlow intercepted, silver flames coiling around him like chains, lifting him off the ground. "You threaten what's mine," she growled, voice fiery and empowered, echoing with authority. The battlefield hushed, wolves on both sides pausing. Physical tension peaked as she held him aloft, muscles straining, but her internal strength unyielding. The child kicked hard, as if approving, a surge of power flowing through her. She wasn't their sacrifice anymore. She was the force they needed. Dominic reached her side, shifting to human form mid-stride, his body battered, but eyes locked on her. He dropped to one knee amid the carnage, not in defeat, but surrender. The air hummed with tension, smoke curling from dying flames, the grove's ancient magic stirring in response. "Harlow," he whispered, voice thick with vulnerability, hand reaching up. "You are not mine to claim. I am yours." The words hung, raw and real, stripping away his alpha pride. Empathy poured from him. He saw her now, truly, the woman who'd borne his hesitations weighed alone. Tears glistened in his eyes, human connection bridging the chasm he'd created. She lowered the enemy leader, flames tightening until he submitted, whimpering. Her gaze softened on Dominic, conflict swirling inside. Forgive the man who'd hurt her, or hold the power she'd claimed. The pack watched, breaths held, the atmosphere electric with possibility. She extended a hand, pulling him up, their touch igniting sparks. "Prove it," she said, voice steady but laced with emotion. He nodded, standing beside her, their bodies close, tension shifting from battle to something intimate. Together, they turned the tide, her silver flames complementing his raw strength, enemies fleeing or yielding. Victory crested like a wave, the grove's stones glowing faintly, the air safe for now. Cheers erupted from the pack, the once mockers now bowing heads in respect. Harlow felt empowerment flood her. She'd returned on her terms, rescued those who doubted, deepened bonds through action. Dominic's arm brushed hers, a silent promise, vulnerability shared in glances. But as the dust settled, a rumble shook the earth, deeper than any wolf's growl. Shadows coalesced at the grove's edge, darker than night, forming a figure cloaked in void, the true villain, ancient and malevolent, eyes like black holes sucking in light. The air chilled instantly, victory's warmth fleeing. Harlow's flames flickered, struggling against the encroaching dark. "What is this?" she breathed, hand instinctively on her belly. The figure laughed, a sound like grinding bones, revealing itself as the Elder Shade, a forgotten entity from werewolf lore, manipulator behind the enemy attack. "You think this ends here?" It hissed, tendrils of shadow snaking toward the stones. Dominic stepped forward, growling, but the Shade's power pressed him back, internal conflict flaring. He'd thought the threat external, but this was primal, tied to their bloodlines. Harlow pushed past him, silver flames surging brighter, clashing with the shadows. Physical tension built as tendrils wrapped her ankles, cold seeping in, but she held firm. Empathy for the pack surged. They'd just united, now facing greater danger. The Shade whispered temptations, preying on her vulnerabilities. "Join me, hybrid. Your child could rule the dark." She recoiled, anger fueling her light. Dominic joined, his hand in hers, connection amplifying their strength. But the Shade retreated slightly, teasing, "This is but the beginning." It vanished, leaving echoes of dread. The grove fell silent, victory tainted. Harlow turned to Dominic, eyes searching his. "We face this together?" He nodded, pulling her close, foreheads touching. "Always yours." Empowerment lingered, but danger loomed, hooking deeper. Harlow's breath steadied as the pack gathered, murmurs rippling like aftershocks. The Elder Shade's presence lingered in the air, a foul residue that made for stand on end. She felt the child stir, stronger now, as if sensing the new threat. Internal conflict brewed. She'd claimed her power, but this darkness targeted the air directly, pulling at her protective instincts. Dominic's grip tightened on her hand, his warmth grounding her amid the chill. "We've beaten odds before," he said softly, voice for her ears only. Vulnerability shone in his eyes, the alpha admitting fear. She nodded, empathy bridging them. He'd surrendered pride, now she'd lean on that bond. They moved to the sacred stones, the pack forming a circle. The once mocking Beta approached head low. "We were wrong," he admitted, voice gruff. "Your flames saved us." Harlow met his gaze, no triumph, just understanding. Their mockery stemmed from fear, like her own doubts. "We all fight shadows," she replied, deepening the connection. The atmosphere shifted, unity forging in the face of greater peril. Physical tension eased slightly, but alertness hummed. Dominic traced the stone's cracks, worry etching his features. The Shade feeds on division. That's why it manipulated the attack. His words hung, revealing layers to the betrayal. He'd hesitated before, widening cracks for darkness to seep in. Regret flickered, but Harlow squeezed his hand. "We mend it now." Their eyes locked, emotion raw, human connection pulsing stronger than any magic. As night deepened, stars piercing the canopy, Harlow felt power surge anew. The silver flame wasn't just destruction, it was light against dark. She practiced control, flames dancing in her palms, illuminating faces around the fire. A young shifter, rescued earlier, watched wide-eyed. "Teach me?" she asked. Harlow smiled, vulnerability shared. She'd been the outsider once. Guiding the pup's hand, a tiny spark ignited, pushing bonds forward. But whispers of the Shade intruded, wind carrying faint laughs. Dominic pulled her aside, into the grove's quieter depths. Moonlight filtered through leaves, casting them in silver. I almost lost you, he confessed, voice breaking. Tension built, bodies close, breaths mingling. She touched his cheek, feeling stubble, the scar from old battles. You have me now. Their kiss was fierce, empowered by reunion, emotions crashing like waves, love, fear, resolve. Yet, the shade's tease lingered, a greater danger promising trials. Harlow broke the kiss, gazing into his eyes. It wants the air. Why? Internal conflict stirred. The child was hybrid, perhaps key to balance or chaos. Dominic held her belly, feeling kicks. We'll protect them. Together. The pack convened, strategies forming. Mira arrived, drawn by instinct, adding her lone wolf wisdom. The shade thrives in secrets, she said, eyeing Dominic. Harlow nodded, appreciating the layered connections, friends, pack, mate. Empowerment grew collective. A scout returned, pale. Shadows move in the east. It's gathering forces. Atmosphere tensed, danger no longer tease, but imminent. Harlow stood, flames ready. We claim our power. The words rallied, hooking resolve. Days blurred into preparation, the grove fortified with wards of flame and fong. Harlow trained with Dominic, their sparring a dance of tension and trust. His claws grazed her skin, never breaking, eyes intense. You're stronger than I knew, he admitted, pulling her close post-session. Vulnerability peaked. He'd underestimated her, fueling past hesitation. She kissed him, empathy flowing. And you're mine to challenge. The child grew restless, kicks like warnings. Harlow confided in Mira by the stream, water rushing cold. What if my power isn't enough? Vulnerability raw, tears mixing with spray. Mira hugged her. It's not just yours. It's ours. Human connection solidified, pushing her forward. Night brought the first skirmish, shadow tendrils probing defenses. Harlow unleashed silver barrages, dispersing them, but one grazed Dominic, chilling his blood. He collapsed briefly, fear spiking her heart. Stay with me, she urged, flames warming him. His eyes opened, weak smile. Always. The incident deepened their bond, emotion surging. The shade manifested in dreams, taunting Harlow. Visions of Dominic betraying again, child stolen. She woke sweating, Dominic soothing. Nightmares, he murmured, holding her. Internal conflict peaked. Trust him fully? His steady heartbeat answered. Vulnerability shared healing wounds. Pack loyalty solidified. The Mocker Beta led drills, crediting Harlow. Her flame lights our path. She felt included, empowerment cinematic in its rise. But the greater danger built. Scouts reported alliances with rogue clans, the shade promising power. Dominic strategized late, stress lining his face. Harlow massaged his shoulders, tension easing under her touch. We face it united, she said. He turned, kissing her palm. My strength. A prophecy unearthed from stones. The hybrid air banishes eternal dark, but at cost. Conflict brewed. What cost? Harlow's hand on belly, protective. No sacrifice, she vowed. The climax neared, shadows massing. Harlow stood at Grove's heart, power claimed, ready. Dominic beside, whispering love. Tease of danger hooked, empowerment blazing. As forces clashed, silver met shadow in explosive fury. Harlow channeled flame through the air's bond, light piercing dark. The shade roared, revealing form, a twisted wolf of void, eyes on the child. Mind to corrupt. Dominic shielded her, taking a hit, blood flowing. Pain twisted his face, but he stood. Not while I breathe. Empathy overwhelmed Harlow, his surrender complete. She surged forward, flames enveloping the shade, burning away layers. It shrieked, retreating, but promised return. The true battle begins. Victory partial, Grove safe, but horizon darkened. Harlow helped Dominic, their connection unbreakable. Empowerment delivered, danger teased, hearts hooked. The night was painted in fire. The field stretched endlessly, grass bending beneath the hiss of heat, embers clinging like stars fallen from the sky. The world was no longer silent. It breathed like a living beast, groaning as flames chewed through wood and ash rose to swallow the air. Harlow stood at the very edge of it all, where the earth split into ruin and promise, where shadows swallowed light and the horizon burned like an omen. Her body trembled, but it wasn't just the heat that made her shake. It was the weight of what grew inside her, the heartbeat that no council, no alpha, no god of wolves could erase. Beneath her palm, pressed against her stomach, she felt it, steady, stubborn, alive. A pulse that belonged not only to her, but to the world beyond her. And Dominic stood beside her, broad shoulders outlined by the glow of fire, his face half-lit, half lost in smoke. His hand hovered near hers, not quite touching, not quite claiming, as if even he did not know whether to shield her or to pull away. His eyes, sharp as storm-forged steel, were fixed not on the flames, but on her, on the fragile woman carrying a life that threatened to rewrite every law his world had ever obeyed. The wolves in the distance howled like judges at a trial, their voices layered. Rage, fear, hunger, prophecy. The council had spoken. The clans had whispered. The rival packs had already bared their fangs. But none of theirs essayed against her chest, and still she stood tall. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears of weakness, but with the unbreakable ache of someone who had been hunted, hated, and hurt, yet refused to fall. Dominic's breath broke the silence. Low, raw, unsteady. A warrior's voice stripped of armor. "They will come for you," he said. Not a warning. Not even a threat. A confession. Harlow tilted her chin, the glow of fire kissing her skin in defiance. "They already have." The wind rose, scattering sparks between them, as though the earth itself tried to tear them apart. His hand finally brushed hers, just a graze, the briefest contact, and it was enough to tell her the truth he would not speak. He was torn, between duty and desire, between the law of blood and the law of heart, between saving her or saving himself. And still, he did not let go. The field burned brighter, orange light spilling over her pale skin, making her look both fragile and fierce. Like a flame that should have never existed, yet refused to die. Her child's glow, faint but real, pulsed beneath her palm, and the fire seemed to bend toward it, as if even nature itself acknowledged what she carried. Was it power, or was it danger? The wolves watching from the treeline did not know. The council far beyond the mountains did not know. And Dominic himself did not know. The only truth left was hers. She turned, her gaze locking on his, her voice breaking into the air like a vow. "If the world calls me a curse, then let it burn. I will not run. Not anymore." Her words sank deep, piercing even the shield he'd built around his soul. His jaw clenched. His chest rose. And for the first time, Dominic's eyes betrayed him, betrayed the war inside him. Because in her defiance, he saw something he had buried in himself long ago. Hope. The earth cracked beneath their feet. Not metaphor. Not illusion. Real. The soil trembled, splitting as if the land itself recoiled from her declaration. Fire spilled into the crevice, glowing veins that looked almost alive. The night howled louder, the wolves answering to something older, something bigger than Alpha or Council. And there, at the edge of ruin, she did not step back. She stepped forward. The glow from within her grew stronger, a faint pulse radiating outward, like a heartbeat too powerful to remain hidden. It was not just the child anymore, it was her. The bond between mother and life, between defiance and destiny, between hunted and hunter. She was not simply carrying something extraordinary. She was becoming extraordinary. Dominic's hand finally closed over hers, rough fingers clutching tight, no longer unsure. For a moment, the warrior bent to the woman, not the alpha to the cursed. For a moment he chose her. But the choice was not his alone. The wolves would decide. The council would decide. And perhaps you would decide. Would you fear her or follow her? Would you call her salvation or curse? Would you see her as a mother or as a storm? The fire hissed. The ground split wider. Her eyes shone brighter. And in that moment, there was no middle ground. Only one question hung in the smoke-choked air, one question that would echo far beyond the burning field, into the hearts of every soul listening now. Will you choose her side? The story does not end here. It cannot, because stories like hers are not meant to fade into silence. They are meant to blaze, to ignite, to remind us that even in the darkest night, a single heartbeat can shake the world. So I will leave you here, at the edge of fire and destiny, with her defiance still burning in your chest. But before you go, before you turn away, remember this. If this story lit a fire in you, if you felt her fear, her fight, her fragile hope, then do not walk away. Subscribe to Florence Werewolf Romance Collections. Here we tell tales that burn. Here we tell tales that breathe. Here we tell tales that choose you, the way destiny chose her. Because this is not the end. This is only the beginning. The ground shuddered beneath their feet, splitting with a violence that felt older than time itself. Harlow staggered, clutching her stomach, her pulse racing as Dominic caught her arm, steadying her against the tearing earth. The night sky above, once jeweled with stars, now churned with clouds that twisted into a storm like ink spilling across parchment. And then came the voice, not spoken, but breathed, not loud, but unshakable. She is not the only flame-bearer. The true alpha has yet to rise. The words sank like claws into marrow, echoing through the cavern of silence that followed. Harlow froze, the child inside her stirring, not with fear, but with recognition, as though the voice itself reached into her womb and awakened something that had always been waiting. Dominic's grip tightened. His body stood like a wall, protective, ready to take on an enemy that had not yet shown its face. But in his chest, his heart pounded with the knowledge that this was no ordinary warning. This was prophecy, ancient and cruel. And prophecies had a way of reshaping the world, whether mortals wanted them or not. The wolves howled. Not just one pack, but many, their cries scattering through the mountains, threading through the forest, weaving into the night air like a chorus of ghosts. It was not celebration. It was not mourning. It was a call to blood, to allegiance, to war. Darkness stirred. The kind of darkness that was not just shadow, but hunger. It pooled at the edges of the burning field, creeping closer, as if listening, as if tasting the fear that rippled through the air. Harlow lifted her head, eyes blazing not just with terror, but with something fiercer, defiance. She had lived her life unwanted, unloved, despised even by those who shared her blood. And yet here she stood, flames at her back, life growing inside her, destiny at her feet. She was no longer a girl at the mercy of fate. She was fate, and she felt the weight of that truth like fire against her skin. Dominic saw it too, in the tilt of her chin, in the steel hidden beneath her trembling body. She was not just carrying a child. She was carrying the future, and futures were always fought for, always bled for. But the voice lingered, not fading,
Not gone.
It whispered again, softer this time, almost intimate. The child is not yours alone. Another rises. Blood will call to blood, and the world will choose. Dominic's breath caught. A storm of questions roared in his chest, but he kept them locked behind his teeth. Fear was an enemy that smelled weakness, and he would not show it. Not here, not in front of her. The earth sealed itself, the split knitting closed as if nothing had ever broken. But the scar remained, a black line across the burning field, a reminder that some wounds never truly heal. Silence fell, heavier than the howl of wolves, heavier than the crack of earth. And in that silence, the truth coiled between them. This was not over. This was only the beginning. Harlow pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the faint flutter within. Not just a child, but a heartbeat echoing with a rhythm older than her own. She whispered inside herself, a vow no one else could hear. Whatever comes, I will not let them take you. Not the darkness. Not the prophecy.
Not even the gods themselves.
Dominic stepped closer, his shadow folding into hers, his warmth steadying the tremble in her limbs. His jaw clenched as he looked out into the treeline, eyes gleaming with the wolf that lived just beneath his skin. He knew they were being watched. He knew unseen eyes had followed them since the voice first rose. And yet he did not falter. Harlow, he said, though his voice was not meant to comfort. It was a vow forged in the iron of his bones. Whatever this prophecy means, whatever comes for you, it will face me first. The flames hissed behind them. The wolves answered in the distance. And the night closed in, not with an ending, but with a promise that fate would return. Because stories like theirs never ended neatly. They fractured, they bled, they burned. And somewhere, beyond the veil of the forest, another heartbeat stirred. Another power opened its eyes. Another destiny uncoiled, ready to clash with theirs. The world was not done with Harlow. The world was only beginning to remember her name. This isn't over. Fade to black.